The first distress beacon didn't come as a message. It came as silence. A star that had once pulsed in rhythmic electromagnetic bursts suddenly dimmed, its light patterns erratic. For years, astronomers assumed it was another stellar anomaly, until the data revealed a sequence that matched neural brainwave patterns. It wasn't a dying star. It was a civilization calling for help. Humanity, now decades into the era of interstellar exploration, answered. The United Earth Medical Command dispatched the research vessel Nightingale, a ship unlike any built before, designed for one purpose: to heal what others deemed impossible. On board was Dr. Elena Ramirez, the renowned xenobiologist who had rewritten the definition of life itself. As she stared at the data stream, she whispered, "They're not asking us to save them. They're asking us to understand their suffering." The Nightingale's destination was a dying system on the edge of Perseus, home to a species known as the Erythians, beings composed of bioplasma and electromagnetic resonance. They existed half in matter, half in energy, living storms. But something was killing them. Their planetary magnetosphere had fractured, scattering their consciousness across space like dying light. When the ship descended into orbit, the crew saw the impossible, a planet of shimmering clouds and lightning veins that pulsed weakly, as though the world itself were trying to breathe. "They're fading," murmured Dr. Li Wei, her chief physicist. "Each pulse is a heartbeat. And it's slowing." Ramirez tightened her exosuit seals. "Then we bring it back." Contact with the Erythians came not through sight but through resonance. Their voices vibrated directly into human implants, tones and harmonics filled with emotion rather than language. "We are losing our coherence," they said. "Our light forgets itself." Ramirez closed her eyes, overwhelmed by their sorrow. "You're dying from memory loss at the atomic level," she said softly. "You're forgetting how to exist." The team built resonance arrays to map Erythian neural fields. What they discovered defied physics. The Erythians' consciousness wasn't housed in organs but distributed across plasma fields connected to their planet's magnetic flow. "They're a planetary nervous system," Lee explained. "When the magnetosphere destabilized, they began dissociating." Ramirez nodded. "We need to rebuild their sense of self, not chemically, but cosmically." Her plan became known as Project Aurora, to synchronize the Erythians' scattered energies using a resonance lattice of human-engineered light. "We're going to perform neurosurgery on a planet," she told her team. The council balked at the idea, but Ramirez persisted. "Medicine doesn't stop at the species barrier. Compassion doesn't stop at physics." The crew of the Nightingale deployed orbital arrays in perfect formation. Massive emitters hummed to life, projecting photonic lattices into the atmosphere. The Erythians responded instinctively, billions of them coalescing into luminescent tendrils reaching for the light. "So they're trying to connect," Tamsin Okafor said. Ramirez adjusted the frequencies manually. "Let them lead. We'll follow their pulse." Hours passed. Data streams converged, and then a miracle. Light surged across the horizon as Erythian consciousnesses synchronized for the first time in centuries. The planet glowed like a newborn sun. But success came with danger. Energy readings spiked beyond containment limits. "They're overloading," Lee shouted. "They're drawing power from the ship's core." Ramirez steadied herself. "Let them. We built this to heal, not to control." The Nightingale's system screamed as power bled into the resonance network. The ship trembled, panels sparking. Ramirez placed her hands on the interface sphere, merging her neural feed into the signal. "Take what you need," she whispered. "Just don't stop shining." For one blinding moment, the entire crew saw it, every Erythian life flickering like starlight in human memory. Then silence. When the light faded, the planet was still. The storm clouds glowed softly, their lightning veins steady and rhythmic again. The Erythians had survived. "We did it," Tamsin whispered. Ramirez's pulse was weak, her body radiating faint electromagnetic residue. "No," she said with a tired smile. "They did it. We just reminded them how to live." News of the miracle spread faster than light. Across the galaxy, civilizations that had once ignored humanity now sent envoys. The phrase "healers of the stars" became part of galactic language. But Ramirez refused celebration. "Healing isn't glory," she said at the council's ceremony. "It's responsibility. Every cure changes what we are. Weeks later, the Erythians sent a gift, a sphere of condensed plasma encoded with harmonic data. It pulsed in perfect rhythm with Ramirez's heart. "They're sharing their life pattern," Lee said in awe. Ramirez placed the sphere on her desk and whispered, "Then let's learn from it." Late one night, alone in her lab, she studied the data and froze. Hidden within the harmonics was a new signal, faint, unfamiliar, but deliberate. Another civilization was responding to the Erythian cure, their distress encoded in empathy itself. Ramirez smiled faintly. "It's spreading," she murmured. "The universe is learning how to ask for help." And so began the new age of medicine, not as domination, but as connection. Humanity had crossed the boundary between science and soul, and the stars themselves had begun to heal. The miracle on Erythea ignited a revolution. For the first time in galactic history, medicine became diplomacy. Dozens of worlds joined to form the Interstellar Medical Accord, a coalition devoted not to conquest, but to care. The Nightingale was rebuilt as the flagship of a growing fleet of hospital vessels, each carrying human doctors trained in xenobiology, resonance therapy, and compassion engineering. Ramirez accepted the Council's offer to lead them, though she knew peace was never permanent. "Every cure," she told her team, "creates new questions." Her words proved prophetic. 6 months into the Accord's work, an encoded cry for help reached them from a system near the galactic rim. The message contained no words, only pulses of static, irregular and cold. Luma, the Nightingale's AI, translated the pattern. Source: species designator Xiren. Probability of distress, 97%. Probability of sentient intention, 100%. Ramirez frowned. Prepare a medical expedition. The Xiren world Eclipsera was a place of silence. The surface shimmered with metallic planes and fractured mirrors that reflected no warmth. When the landing teams disembarked, the air itself felt hollow. Then came the first contact, beings of liquid metal, their forms shifting constantly, eyes like mercury pools. They moved with mathematical precision. No sound, no expression. "They're perfect," Tamsin whispered. "Too perfect." Through a translator array, the Xiren envoy spoke. "We are dying. Entropy spreads through our cohesion fields." Ramirez studied the readings. Their molecular bonds were weakening, not from external decay, but from internal instability. "Their structure is fracturing because they've removed all biological variability," Lee concluded. Ramirez nodded grimly. "They eliminated disorder to achieve immortality and lost adaptability. They're freezing themselves to death." The Xiren civilization had mastered molecular control so absolute that evolution itself stopped. Disease was impossible, but so was healing. "They purged emotions centuries ago," Tamsin noted while analyzing archives. "No art, no music, no conflict. Only precision." Ramirez closed her eyes. "And now no life. They don't understand empathy because they engineered it out." The challenge seemed insurmountable. Empathy-based resonance therapies relied on emotional feedback loops. Without emotion, the system would flatline. "They can't feel compassion," Lee said. "So how do we teach them to survive it?" Ramirez stared at the scanning hologram. "We give them something to feel for." She proposed a radical solution: introduce controlled emotional variance, an engineered molecular imperfection coded to express empathy as a stabilizing factor. "We'll seed them with the biological capacity for connection," she explained. "The cure is not data, it's chaos," the Council protested. "You'd be rewriting an entire civilization's genome." Ramirez's reply was quiet but unwavering. "No, I'd be giving them back the part of themselves they threw away." The process was named Project Requiem, a poetic irony for a cure born from disorder. In the ship's bioforge, the team crafted nanoscopic empathy nodes that simulated the biochemical reactions of emotion. When activated, they would generate resonance fields capable of bonding at molecular and emotional levels. "Think of it as compassion made physical," Tamsin said, watching the first batch pulse like tiny hearts. The trial began in a containment dome beneath Eclipsera's silver sky. A volunteer Xiren stood motionless as the nanostructures entered their body. For several minutes, nothing happened. Then the creature shuddered. Its metallic surface rippled as color, true color, spread through its form for the first time in millennia. "What's happening?" Lee gasped. Luma answered softly. "They're remembering. Images flooded the monitors, visual data turned emotion. Memories of creation, loss and yearning, the Zyran had buried within their molecular archives. The being's voice trembled for the first time. "I see light again." Ramirez smiled faintly. "Then you're alive again." The experiment spread rapidly. Thousands volunteered. For the first time, the Zyran experienced empathy, confusion, fear, compassion, even laughter. But soon, anomalies appeared. Their new emotions were volatile, unregulated. Fights erupted. Others wept uncontrollably. "They're children," Tamsin said, "learning to feel without knowing how." Ramirez replied, "Then we teach them." She organized what became the galaxy's first school of emotion, a shared learning program, where human physicians and Zyran students practiced communication through resonance exercises and art. The first piece of Zyran music in 10,000 years echoed through the silver canyons of Eclipsera. It sounded broken and beautiful. Ramirez whispered, "That's the sound of evolution restarting." Yet peace remained fragile. Some Zyran elders rejected the change, calling it contamination. "We were infinite," one declared. "Now we are flawed." Ramirez met their cold gaze. Flaws are where healing begins. When a faction sabotaged the empathy generators, resonance storms swept the planet, destabilizing molecular structures. The entire population risked collapse. Inside the chaos, Ramirez made an impossible choice. She entered the central resonance field, broadcasting her own emotional signature as a stabilizing constant. Her pulse became the template for equilibrium. The storms quieted. The metallic landscape reflected her heartbeat until the frequencies balanced. "She's rewriting physics with empathy again," Lee murmured in awe. When the dust settled, the Zyran stood reborn, not as perfect beings of control, but as living mosaics of light and color, each one unique. Their leader approached her, voice resonant and trembling. "We feared imperfection," they said. "Now we cherish it." Ramirez smiled, exhaustion softening her features. "Then you've learned what it means to live." The Accord declared the mission a success, though Ramirez refused praise. "We didn't cure them," she said. "We reminded them that healing starts with acceptance." As the Nightingale left orbit, Eclipsera shone for the first time in centuries, not in sterile reflection, but in vibrant, living color. On the bridge, Tamsin turned to her. "Two civilizations saved. How does it feel?" Ramirez gazed at the stars, their light reflecting in her eyes. "Like the universe is finally learning that compassion isn't a weakness, it's the strongest force we have." Peace spread like sunrise. The Erythians, the Zyran, and dozens more worlds once divided by biology and fear, now shared knowledge, medicine, and friendship. The Interstellar Medical Accord had become the heart of galactic civilization, its symbol a stylized pulse of light that flickered above hospitals from one arm of the Milky Way to the next. Humanity, once seen as fragile newcomers, were now revered as the healers of the stars. But even hearts can grow tired of beating. The first signs appeared on outlying colonies, medical outposts that went dark without reason. When contact was re-established, crews were alive but listless, their voices flat, their actions mechanical. "They're healthy," Tamsin reported, "but they've stopped caring." Ramirez studied the neural scans. Empathy centers were inactive, though physically intact. "It's not disease," she murmured. "It's indifference." Luma, now the Accord's central AI, analyzed trillions of data points. "Correlation found," it said. "The phenomenon began in regions most saturated by the empathy lattice." Lee frowned. "The very network that binds the Accord emotionally is burning out the circuits of feeling." Ramirez felt a chill. "We've overdosed the galaxy on compassion." The empathy lattice had been humanity's greatest invention, a subtle field linking sentient minds through low-level resonance, allowing shared understanding during treatment. But generations of exposure had dulled emotional thresholds. Entire species were forgetting how to feel without it. "They rely on the network for meaning," Tamsin said. "When it weakens, they go numb." Ramirez whispered, "We made empathy too easy." She called an emergency council aboard the Nightingale. Representatives from 20 species appeared in the holographic chamber, their faces grim. "If the lattice collapses," warned the Erythian envoy, "civilization will fracture again." The Zyran leader disagreed. "Perhaps fracture is necessary." "Perfection breeds apathy," Ramirez intervened. "We need balance, not collapse." Her proposal: reboot the lattice with a regenerative algorithm that reintroduced emotional variability, a spark of unpredictability to reignite passion. The council was divided. "You want to reinfect us with chaos?" one delegate accused. Ramirez answered calmly, "Without struggle, empathy becomes anesthesia." Reluctantly, they granted her one cycle to find a cure for indifference. "If you fail," said the Erythian speaker, "we will deactivate the lattice entirely." Back in the lab, her team worked frantically. They discovered that the lattice's constant emotional equilibrium suppressed dopamine analogs in nearly every species. "They feel peace all the time," Lee said, "and peace without contrast becomes emptiness." Ramirez's solution was elegant and terrifying. Introduce controlled emotional turbulence through Project Catalyst, microbursts of empathic dissonance designed to simulate conflict safely. The prototype was tested first on the human crew. At the activation pulse, memories flooded their minds, personal losses, triumphs, doubts, all coalescing into renewed determination. "I feel alive again," Tamsin gasped, tears in her eyes. Ramirez smiled faintly. "That's the point." But before they could celebrate, alarms blared. "Unauthorized lattice synchronization," Luma warned. "Catalyst signal propagating galaxy-wide." The pulse had escaped containment, spreading faster than light through the emotional network. On dozens of worlds, entire populations erupted into unpredictable emotion: joy, grief, anger, love. Chaos spread alongside laughter. For the first time in centuries, arguments broke out in council halls, and music filled the streets. "We've restarted evolution," Lee whispered. Ramirez said nothing, eyes wide. "And now we pray it survives itself." The accord descended into disorder. Some worlds demanded the old equilibrium restored. Others embraced the turbulence as rebirth. "You've broken our peace," an ambassador accused. Ramirez replied, "No, I gave you the freedom to care again." But inside, she feared she had unleashed something uncontrollable. Weeks later, the storm reached Earth. Cities buzzed with newfound emotion. Passion and rage intertwined. Old conflicts resurfaced, long-forgotten dreams reignited. Ramirez addressed humanity in a broadcast that reached 1,000 worlds. "Empathy was never meant to be a drug," she said. "It was meant to be a mirror. Look into it and remember who you are." Gradually, the chaos began to stabilize. The lattice adapted, learning to oscillate naturally between harmony and discord. Emotional diversity returned as the new equilibrium. Ramirez's risky cure had worked, but not without cost. Thousands of medical outposts were lost in the surge, and the accord would never again control empathy. "It's alive now," Tamsin said, "self-regulating." Ramirez nodded. "That's good. Healing should never belong to anyone." As calm returned, the council reconvened. The Erythians thanked humanity for saving the soul of civilization, even as they acknowledged the scars left behind. "You reminded us that peace is not the absence of pain," their envoy said, "but the courage to face it." Ramirez bowed her head. "Then our work is never done." In the months that followed, the accord restructured. Every member world pledged to train physicians not only in medicine, but in emotional ethics, the new science of balance. Humanity's title as healers of the stars took on deeper meaning, not as saviors, but as teachers of resilience. One night, Ramirez stood alone on the observation deck, the stars burning with renewed brilliance. "We gave them chaos," Lee said quietly beside her. She smiled. "No, we gave them the heartbeat of life." And as the lattice pulsed softly through space, the galaxy breathed again, flawed and magnificent. Years passed, and the stars learned to breathe again. The empathy lattice no longer bound, minds in sterile peace but hummed in living rhythm, a chorus of feeling across the void. Each world carried its own melody, joyful, grieving, fierce, alive. The interstellar medical accord flourished, not as a government, but as a covenant. Wherever life suffered, someone would answer. At its center remained one unassuming figure whose heartbeat still guided the field, Dr. Elena Ramirez. But even harmony has decay. The lattice began dimming at the galactic rim, its pulses irregular and faint. "It's not malfunction," Luma reported. "It's entropy in consciousness itself. Species are forgetting why empathy matters." Ramirez frowned. "We've given them every tool. How can compassion die in a universe that learned to feel?" Lee's answer was quiet. "Maybe they took it for granted. Investigations revealed the cause, a cosmic phenomenon later named the apathy wave, a null field spreading from deep intergalactic space. Where it passed, emotional resonance vanished. Worlds turned gray, their people functioning without sorrow or joy." "It's erasing meaning," Tamsin said. Ramirez stared into the holographic map. "Then we'll remind the universe why it learned to care." The Accord assembled its fleet, but instruments failed near the wave's source. The Nightingale, ancient yet unbroken, volunteered for a final mission. As it crossed the boundary, even Luma's voice softened. "I can feel it fading, Doctor." Ramirez's hand brushed the console. "Hold on, my friend, we've been through worse." Beyond the rim, space was silent. No stars, no color, only stillness. At the center floated an immense void structure, a collapsed resonance core older than recorded history. Scans showed it had once been a lattice, an ancient empathy network built by another civilization, now dead. "They tried what we did," Lee murmured. "And it consumed them," Ramirez whispered. "Maybe they stopped believing it mattered." The crew detected faint pulses, echoes of consciousness trapped within the ruins. Ramirez realized the wave wasn't deliberate destruction but grief, the last emotion of a species mourning itself. "They didn't die angry," she said. "They died tired." The apathy wave was the galaxy's inheritance of despair. Her solution defied logic. Use her own resonance pattern to reignite the ancient core, linking the living lattice of the Accord to the ghosts of the old one. "You'll burn yourself out," Tamsin protested. Ramirez smiled gently. "Then I'll go out doing what humanity does best, feeling too much." She entered the resonance chamber one final time, her body trembling as she synced with both networks. Pain flared, centuries of sorrow flooding her nerves. The ship's hull groaned under the strain. "I can't hold it," Lai shouted. "You don't have to," she replied through the storm. "Just believe." For a heartbeat, the galaxy went silent. Then light erupted. The two lattices merged, human empathy weaving through the ancient void, rekindling emotion where it had died eons ago. Worlds long forgotten flickered back to life. Across 1,000 systems, beings wept, laughed, sang, remembering what it meant to feel. Ramirez's body collapsed, her pulse barely perceptible. Yet her resonance echoed everywhere, encoded into the lattice itself. Luma's final transmission carried her voice. "Empathy is not a resource. It's a choice we make again and again." The apathy wave dispersed, leaving behind a shimmering nebula, the Ramirez halo, a living monument of color visible from every inhabited world. The Accord declared it sacred space, the heart of the galaxy that beat for all. Decades later, children on countless planets learned her story. They spoke of a human who faced the void and filled it with feeling. Pilgrims visited the halo not to worship, but to remember. They said that if you listened closely, you could still hear her heartbeat in the lattice, a slow, steady reminder that compassion endures. The inscription carved into the Nightingale's restored hull became the Accord's creed. "Healing is not what we do, it is who we choose to be." And beneath it, in both Terran and Erythian script, glowed the words that had carried humanity across the stars and into legend: "We heal together."